Donald Trump just made an insane announcement about Tylenol, and if you were looking for a video that's going to easily debunk everything he just announced, well, this video is for you. And please do send it to your friends and family because what he is doing is so dangerous. He's claiming that pregnant women who take Tylenol could be increasing the risk of autism in their children. And now he's telling children and women not to take Tylenol. And he's calling on the FDA to change warning labels despite there being no clear scientific evidence backing any of this. What he's doing is frankly dangerous and it's going to hurt people. But to help us sort through all of this, I'm joined by Dr. Dara Kass. She's an emergency medicine physician, a professor, and you may know her from her commentary on MSNBC. She's here right now to help walk us through all of this. Before we get to it, please do hit like, subscribe, and here's Dr. Dara Kass. Dr. Dara, thank you so much for joining last minute to talk about what is, to me, I would love to hear what you say or have to think about this, but an insane announcement about vaccines and Tylenol, and what they are alleging are the reasons why autism is occurring in this country. And I just would love to just first off get your sense of like, is there any legitimacy to what the president of the United States is saying?
So there can be legitimacy to questions about whether or not medications we take in pregnancy can affect a later diagnosis or development of autism. I want to really acknowledge that, right? Every parent who has been pregnant, any parent who has a kid, you always want to ask more questions and be concerned about the development of your kid. Like, I want to call that out first and foremost. And even at this press conference, there were moms who were talking about their experience. And so we need to validate that. And that is really important. And what the president said was this press conference was worse than the inject bleach during COVID press conference. Like, let's put it out on the spectrum of crazy press conferences coming from this president. That's where we are. The level of inflammatory and unfounded statements that he made, particularly beyond the scope of we want to understand any correlation between a medication and a medical condition, was just so beyond the scope of anything we've heard short of the inject bleach during COVID press conference.
And he was alleging that taking Tylenol when pregnant is a cause of autism. From what I understand, autism's been around for a while. Tylenol has not, right?
Right. So the diagnosis of autism started in the 1910s, and the Tylenol or acetaminophen was, developed in the 1950s. So it is true that we had the diagnosis of autism before we had Tylenol. It's also true that we can find correlation and causation, right? So the idea that taking a medication can cause a condition after a diagnosis is developed, and especially an autism diagnosis is a spectrum, right? The autism spectrum. So there are lots of things that put someone at risk for autism or can cause autism, right? Over 80% of kids who are diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder are found to be a genetic condition, right? But there are other medications that can cause risk, well known, right? Aging parents. So I hate to break it to you, but it's been found that paternal age, the age of the father, can be related to an increase in a diagnosis of autism, and the age of the mother. But actually, there's a slightly increased probably risk of the father being older and that being a risk. There's a lot of things that can contribute to a diagnosis of autism. So far, not Tylenol is what we need to talk about, right? There has been no proven causation effect between taking Tylenol in pregnancy and a diagnosis of autism. It doesn't mean that we would never find a relationship. It just means we haven't found one yet.
Got it. I want to play this clip because this is why Trump was saying that he feels like there is a correlation.
What parts of the world are going through. And I will say there are parts of the world that don't take Tylenol. I mean, there's a rumor, and I don't know if it's so or not, that Cuba, they don't have Tylenol because they don't have the money for Tylenol, and they have virtually no autism. Okay, tell me about that one. Parts of the world.
So he says that there's no cause, or that it could possibly be linked because Cuba doesn't take Tylenol and have autism. First off, can we just talk about is it unsafe for the president to just be saying things like, I'm not so sure, but here's what I'm hearing around medicine?
Right. So let's hold on to that. I'm just asking questions, right? Or what he said today multiple times, which was there's no harm in stopping taking Tylenol, right? His big statement through this entire press conference was if you're pregnant, unless it's 100% absolutely necessary, you can't tough it out. He said so many things to people who are pregnant, to women, about toughing it out and suffering through the pain, as if they failed to tough it out if they have to take Tylenol. The idea that you would not take Tylenol if you have a fever or if you have a severe headache. I mean, there are so many conditions where people come to the ER pregnant and we give them Tylenol for their condition. What happens now, because of what the president says, if somebody comes to my emergency department pregnant with a severe headache, a condition called preeclampsia, right, which is a high blood pressure that's very dangerous in pregnancy, and we want to give them Tylenol, and now they won't take it, right? This is not the word we use is benign. This is not harmless for him to say that you should not take Tylenol if you're pregnant. He also went even further to say you shouldn't take it, you shouldn't give it to a baby. Before 6 months, you can't give a baby Motrin. You're not supposed to, okay? Motrin would reduce a fever, treat pain or whatever. So we give babies Tylenol before 6 months. That is what is recommended for a fever and a baby. So before 6 months, Tylenol is the recommended medication for a baby with a fever, not just from a vaccine, but from a virus. So what happens now if parents don't try to control their baby's fever and that fever gets out of control? This is really not, this is not harmless. This can be very harmful.
Well, what would happen if a fever gets out of control because they're not giving their child Tylenol?
I mean, a lot of things, right? So first of all, you can have effects of brain function later on, other neurocognitive effects if you have untreated fevers in babies. Do you remember the stories from like Little House on the Prairie or these TV shows about the high fevers? Okay, I'm older than you, but there are these TV shows before we had modern medicine where the high fever made somebody lose their hearing. Like, these are not conditions we think about anymore because we have medications that treat fevers. But a high fever in a baby is not something that should just be left alone. There's a reason we tell parents to treat fevers in babies. Again, high fevers, babies have seizures. Like, this is very reckless to have the president, spewing this from the podium of the White House to parents and pregnant people that just want to take the best care of themselves and their babies.
He also said this about MMR vaccines. I would just love to get your thoughts on it. Here's this.
And we've already done this. We want no mercury in the vaccine. We want no aluminum in the vaccine. The MMR, I think, should be taken separately. This is based on what I feel, the mumps, measles, and all the three should be taken separately.
So again, the president saying what he feels around vaccines, and then I truly don't know this, so I'm glad you're on. Like mercury and does that matter?
What matters is it's not happening. There is none. Like, this is not a thing. Like, so like, to be clear, like,
I'm glad I asked.
Right. I mean, this goes back to this whole, like, I'm just asking questions, right? They spend all this time talking about things that don't happen in order to tell you what they want to do, which can be harmful, right? So he talked a lot about these additives that are not in vaccines, or certainly not in vaccines at any level that is not as a small preservative for a multi-dose vaccine, things that normal people don't bother thinking about because it's not important to waste their brain on this. And then he talks about spreading out this MMR combined vaccine, while also talking about how many shots babies have to take, right? So he's talking out of both sides. He's saying they get 80 shots and their poor thighs and all the babies don't need to get so many shots. But here's this one combination vaccine, and I'm going to tell you to stop giving it as a combination, but split it up. And all that means is babies are going to have to come, in theory, for more visits to the doctor or, get more shots on a single day. And again, how many shots go in your body is not the point. It's how many shots you got at the same time. Like, so if you use 3 different syringes to give a baby a vaccine and they all go in the same body, it doesn't matter if they all started in the same vaccine. Like, I think that might be lost on him as well. Like,
Right.
is he talking about changing the timeline of giving those vaccines? Like, so that they shouldn't be given together? When are they supposed to be given? Which one do you give first? Right? Like, this is all so just irresponsible to be coming from behind the seal of the President of the United States, who then went on about the hepatitis vaccine, something they just talked about at this meeting, right? The ACIP meeting, where he's now going further than anybody ever said at the meeting. And he kept talking about sex and babies, that babies can't get a sexually transmitted disease. And what's ironic about that is the risk to babies about hepatitis B comes in the birth process when they travel down the birth canal.
Mm-hmm.
And to revert to talking about a sexually transmitted disease when we're talking about the process of giving birth is just, I mean, it's gross. I don't know what else to say. It like evokes this sense of like, you know, like the way that you're talking about the birth process. It just, this whole thing about, you know, what, tough it out if you're pregnant. Don't give your baby Tylenol. Don't give them this vaccine because they're not at risk for the sexually transmitted disease, when in fact it's the birth process that puts them at risk. Like the whole press conference was like just dangerous and off at the same time.
And just to put a final point on this, like there is no link between vaccines and autism that we know of. Like there's been a lot of research on this because there's been a lot of smart people who have wanted to look into it, and there's just no link.
No, there's no link. And this is the thing that I think we need to remember again. Everybody wants to find the cause and effect of medications, of vaccine, whatever it is, right? You know, the other part about, I think, a lot of this is the idea that, you know, having an autism diagnosis is something that has to be solved, right? There are a lot of people who have, you know, children who have been diagnosed on the autism spectrum disorder, who themselves are on the autism spectrum disorder, who find a lot of issue with the idea that this entire process of, you know, kind of trying to cure autism in every person is a uniform thing, right? But having that said, there have been so many studies for decades looking at the correlation between vaccines and autism, and nothing has been found. Okay. And it is unbelievable to us, to me, to the medical community, that we're going to spend all this time and now money relitigating a question that's been answered instead of asking questions about things like childhood cancer, other new and emerging viruses and diseases, disinvesting in the mRNA vaccine, right? There was questions at the press conference about investing in, you know, SNAP and other childhood, you know, food service programs and Medicaid. Like, it's not just a distraction that they're talking about this to just ask questions. They are diverting money from places we need it to re-ask questions that have already been answered.
I'm kind of at a loss for words at how dangerous this is. And as we said at the top, I'm a big believer that, you know, there should be a healthy skepticism around the way that we treat diseases in this country. It does sometimes feel like it is a sickness care system rather than a healthcare system, and I understand why folks are frustrated by it. But at the same time, this is one of the ways that you're not going to solve it, is what they're doing here. And it's very frustrating.
No, I mean, look, I am somebody who takes care of people in emergencies, and yet every day, right? I mean, you know, as often as I go into work. And there are so many things we could be doing better in America: preventative disease care, you know, nutrition, you know, wellness, walking. I mean, it's interesting to me that a lot of the groups that he's talking about, things like the Amish or Japanese people, that they don't have a lot of these diagnoses and any chronic health conditions. Like, there's a real lesson to be learned from people that are outside every day doing hard labor. Like, we can talk a lot about the opportunities to improve our health and our wellness. That's why the whole idea of Make America Healthy Again, right? There's a lot of conversations we should be having about food additives, about the way that we move our bodies, about, you know, sitting all day in front of a computer. All that is on the table for making us healthier. And that should not replace the science and technology that we have to treat diseases that we have, and the advances that we're making, and the need to invest in our future. And so unfortunately, because we can't seem to be doing both at the same time, the harm we're causing is actually a lot greater, it seems, than the help that we're giving by focusing on some of these community and environmental factors.
Well, I just got to say, I'm so grateful that you hopped. I know that this is, people don't know, you're super last minute, and I texted you and you're like, when can we do it? Let's do it immediately. And I was like, thank you so much. Cause this, I was watching this. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical, expert or anything, but I just could tell what was happening was very unsafe. And so I'm just glad that we were able to put some good information out there.
Yeah. I want to be really clear because I was on fire. My group chat was on fire. I want to be really clear for people that watched or will see clips of this press conference. We have no information or new data to support the concern that Tylenol causes autism and that pregnant people should not take Tylenol. If you're pregnant in the United States or anywhere in the world right now, and your doctor tells you to take Tylenol, please listen to your doctor. There's no evidence that we should stop giving Tylenol to babies. If your baby has a fever and your doctor tells you to take Tylenol, to give your baby Tylenol, please listen to your doctor. The most important thing we can take away from today is something that we learned the hard way 5 years ago, which is that we should not be taking medical advice from the president of the United States.
From this president, especially.
From this president behind the seal of the president of the United States at a podium. We learned this the first time during COVID. And today was a day that I think we need to all recognize that. Please listen to your doctors, listen to the scientists. Healthy skepticism is good, but what we heard today was scary.
Well, again, thank you, doctor, for coming on. And I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of people you've helped just now. So thank you. And I hope you come back soon. I hope for better reasons, but still thank you again.
We'll talk about some good stuff. Okay.
Thanks.